Hi friends, Pastor Doug Batchelor. I want to welcome you to our Friday evening Bible question of the week, where we're going to be talking about, should a Christian celebrate Halloween?
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Hey everyone, JL here, and welcome back to Bridge the Divide, where I examine irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that follow, and how we, with education, rationality, and reason, can bridge the societal divides that they create. So it's that time of year, the best time of year. It's the spooky season, those wonderful days leading up to the best of all the holidays, Halloween. And seeing as how so many other creators are making Halloween-centric content, because let's face it, Halloween is awesome, I knew I could also get in on the fun when I came across this video put out by the Seventh-day Adventist ministry Amazing Facts that talks about being a faithful Christian during Halloween. Presented by Pastor Doug Batchelor, who runs the Amazing Facts ministry out of Granite Bay, California, the video seeks to address the complications of being a Christian during what is obviously the greatest holiday of the year. So let's dive in and see if Doug here grasps the actual reason as to why those complications exist, or if he fails to see the cemetery for the tombstones.
Hi friends, Pastor Doug Batchelor. I want to welcome you to our Friday evening Bible question of the week, where we're going to be talking about, should a Christian celebrate Halloween?
I would answer this question with a resounding yes. Historically, Halloween, or Samhain, is a Gaelic festival that marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of winter. It's understood that the festival has Celtic pagan origins and is associated with many important events in Irish mythology. However, from a more contemporary standpoint, Halloween, especially in the US, is just a night for celebration. It's a night for communities, large and small, to come together in whatever fashion they choose and have fun. It's important to note that the celebration of Halloween should not be conflated with celebrating on Halloween. Partaking in the telling of scary stories, carving pumpkins, trick-or-treating, haunted houses, or community parties does not equate to or even imply belief or worship. The joys of creativity, imagination, and community celebration should not be denied anyone, and I would take a Christian ban on Halloween as just another impotent attempt to control the behavior of others.
And naturally, during this time of year, going far back as September, the store shelves begin to fill up with Halloween decorations and costumes and lots of candy.
Visiting the Halloween aisle is a blast, no matter what your age. It really is the most wonderful time of the year, where the only condemnable offense is handing out circus peanuts to trick-or-treaters. You know who you are.
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
I understand that about 1/4 of the annual sales of candy are in connection with Halloween. It is a multi-billion-dollar business every year, and retail industries cannot afford to downplay Halloween because it's a real pot of gold for them, you might say.
Nice Celtic reference there, Doug. And of course Halloween is a cash cow for candy makers. Welcome to capitalism. But the mass retailing of candy has absolutely nothing to do with whether or not people should celebrate or just have fun on Halloween. And it's more than a little hypocritical of you, Doug, because I don't see you taking a swing at the candy industry come April, when this co-opted and commercialized Germanic pagan symbol for rebirth and renewal comes hopping around bringing treats.
So how does a Christian relate to that? Probably a good idea to look at some of the history.
Understanding how throughout the ages as Christianity creeped ever westward, it co-opted many pagan religious festivals to make it easier for those cultures to convert into the new belief system, because it was either that or be put to the sword. You can understand what many of them chose. And the fact that the history and practice of these traditions lives on today is direct evidence that many of those who said they converted never actually did.
Halloween can be traced back about 100 years AD. It was a Celtic holiday.
Samhain is one of the 4 Gaelic seasonal festivals, and it's celebrated about halfway between the autumnal equinox and the winter solstice. The earliest mention of the celebration was from Irish literature dating back to about the 9th century. Oh, and for those studying language and history, Doug, it's pronounced Celtic. Celtics is reserved for Boston basketball and a beloved football team in Glasgow.
That was celebrated in Ireland, England, northern France. That was pagan.
Let's break down some facts regarding the word pagan and explore exactly why Doug here uses it as a pejorative. The term pagan was first used in the 4th century by early Christians as a derogatory label for people who practiced polytheism or ethnic religions other than Judaism. Other equivalent terms used were Gentile, heathen, and Hellen. And it would be during the Middle Ages when the term was applied to any non-Christian religion, them presuming a belief in false gods. And it wouldn't be until the 20th century when polytheists began to adopt the term as a self-descriptor, taking their cue from the artistic groups of the 19th century who used the term to describe their ancient world inspirations. But at its core, especially for an irrational evangelist like Doug here, the term pagan is fully intended to be a grave insult. It's just one of many ways that Doug here colors this abbreviated look at history with his own bias.
And they believed on November 1st, it was a time in the year when the dead souls were able to interact with the living.
Considered a threshold festival, Samhain was believed to be a time when the boundary between this world and the Celtic otherworld thinned. This meant that the Ishi, spirits, or fairies could more easily enter our realm of existence. These entities were then appeased with food, drink, and celebration to ensure that people and livestock survived the coming winter. Guising, or donning costumes, was done to pay respects to the Ishi and to disguise oneself from some of the more mischievous fae, lest they follow them home and cause trouble. And while some believed that these supernatural visitors included the souls of dead relatives looking to revisit their homes, even going so far as to set a place for them at the table during a meal, the primary purpose of the festival was to celebrate the harvest of a year's hard work and to appease the Sidhe so that they might grant a safe winter.
And they believed that if you didn't offer some kind of gift or treat or offering to the dead spirits at your door, they might play tricks on you.
As you can see, Doug has allowed Christian propaganda to infect his interpretation of the holiday, and as such, he's dishonestly conflating aspects of the holiday. Treats like bowls of milk, bread, wine, fruits, vegetables, and hazelnuts were given out for the Sidhe because many were considered mischievous and some downright dangerous. But the spirits of dead ancestors were revered and always treated with the utmost respect.
It was a time of peak activity. They would have bonfires, and the word bonfire actually comes from the root word bone fires, and it was all related to consulting with the dead and paganism and witchcraft and spells and...
Oh, Doug, you were doing so well until you decided to just lie your ass off. Yes, the ancient Celts did build and burn what we now call bonfires, and they lit and carried torches throughout the night to ward off what they believed were the more malicious entities. And yes, the term bonfire is derived from the term bonefire. But the word bonefire actually traces back to the 15th century, and its origin is decidedly not pagan. It's Middle English, and it's first found in the English-Latin word book Catholicum Anglicum from 1483. And the word was used to describe large piles of animal bones that were burnt in celebration of a particular saint. Much like the festival of St. John, which is celebrated around the summer solstice, a festival co-opted by the Christians from the Greeks who used to use it to honor Apollo. Conflation and misrepresentation seem to be a real problem for you, Doug.
And what happened is around the time of St. Patrick, when he was there in Ireland, he was trying to get people away from the paganism.
Which he obviously didn't do.
But some of the Christians in Ireland thought, well, we could reach more of the Christians if we allow them to embrace and if we sort of baptize some of their pagan festivals.
That would be correct. Christianity co-opting religious festivals to make conversion to their faith easier is a well-documented and understood practice. You can keep all the fun stuff, but just change the focus to Jesus and God. Hence the creation of All Saints or All Hallows Eve.
And so they started saying that Halloween was the time of All Saints Eve.
Thanks, Doug.
And that they made the 31st of October be the day when they celebrated the dead saints, who they believed they could still pray to that weren't really dead.
That's right, Doug. As a Seventh-day Adventist, you would have a major problem with the Catholics. I think I'm beginning to see where some of the problem is.
But the Bible's pretty clear that Christians ought to avoid things related to witchcraft.
Well, that's kind of problematic, Doug, and for two reasons. First, because you assert the truth of the Bible without first demonstrating that your God actually exists to make it true, which is logically fallacious. And second, because you, and this is true for virtually all Christians, use the term witchcraft as a sort of catch-all for any kind of religious activity that doesn't venerate your God. Now, in its most basic sense, witchcraft is merely regarded as the use of magic. It derives from the Old English compound of witcha, meaning a female sorceress, and creft, meaning skill. And the historical demonization of those who were Wicca stemmed from the Christian propaganda that any religious activity, including prayer and ritual, that were not performed in the name of the Christian God were inherently evil because they invoked entities that the Christians held to be false gods. And Christians steadfastly held to this form of religious fascism despite the hypocrisy that prayers, rituals, blessings, and curses are all used to varying degrees in the practice of Christianity. And that's because it wasn't the craft itself that was offensive to Christians, it was the fact that the target of the craft was not their God. Which is kind of weird because if Christians truly believed that their God was the most powerful, then why would they care what anyone else believed, knowing it would all come out in the wash? I hazard that it probably had something to do with all the power that it afforded its leadership and all of the money it was bringing in at the time.
So there are some pagan holidays that really don't conflict with any Christian principles.
So, Doug, you're saying that which practices do and which practices don't is a completely subjective determination? Good to know.
Thanksgiving is not in the Bible, the American day for Thanksgiving, but obviously it's a great holiday that Christians can embrace.
Given the Christian penchant for genocide, it's not surprising they can get behind it.
But really, Halloween is not something Christians should embrace.
Sadly, Doug, logical fallacy and a distaste for anything remotely associated with the Catholics is not a good enough reason to not have fun on a particular night, especially one that celebrates communities coming together as much as Halloween does.
And again, it says, think on those things that are just and good and noble and holy and pure. And you just walk up and down the aisles during the Halloween season.
What is it with evangelicals and their overuse of air quotes? Halloween, Doug, is a concept that people recognize. It's not something that you can just air quote away out of personal derision.
And you see all the witches and the monsters and the ghosts and...
As if those are the only costumes people can choose. What about priests, angels, and nuns? I mean, those costumes are pretty awesome. And even better, they keep with the faith.
And one of the things Christians need to really understand is the state of the dead. The living know they'll die, the dead don't know anything.
There's that Christian propaganda again, Doug. Celebrating on Halloween does not entail communing with the dead. Sometimes it's just about dressing up in a silly costume and maxing out your annual allowance of peanut butter cups.
Halloween, the yards are decorated with the ghosts and witches and spirits, and some of our neighbors are very creative. They got little tombstones all over their yard and spider webs. It's all kind of creepy.
That would be a conclusion based on your bias, Doug. It's what we call an opinion. Do you happen to have a logical argument as to why anyone should adopt your opinion over their own? Or are you just one of those salty curmudgeons whose house the kids all avoid because they turn their porch light off when the street lights come on?
And you wonder, how much should a Christian support that?
As much as they want to, really. It's a social occasion where nobody really cares how elaborate your decorations are or how intricate your costume is. It's one where the only real stigma is being seen as a disgruntled party pooper.
How do you relate to it? You live in a neighborhood where all the cute little trick-or-treaters are coming around. Are you supposed to open the door and then slam it in their faces after you tell them, this is of the devil, we don't believe in Halloween?
Be honest, Doug. That's totally what you do, isn't it?
Bible says overcome evil with good. That's probably not the best witness. In the bachelor family, we might give them a box of raisins, give them something positive, and give them a tract.
So you're the house that gives out what kids actively don't want and contributes more wasted paper to our landfills.
Amazing Facts has some new lessons that we've done for kids. We've got one called Whistling Through the Graveyard. You can find at the Amazing Facts bookstore.
Despite your distaste for Halloween, it's good to see you haven't lost your taste for making money there, Doug.
But what do you do with your kids? The kids, they see all their friends are going to Halloween parties and things.
This question actually highlights the biggest problem with religious ideology, and that is the societal divides that it inherently creates between people. As a parent, it's important to set rules and boundaries for children. But it's also important to teach them that they live in a world composed of many beliefs and traditions, and that enjoying the community that comes with any particular celebration does not mean a sacrifice of any other aspects of their life. But taking a hardline stance and deliberately ostracizing children from the experiences of their friends only serves to reinforce the irrational idea that they are in some way socially separated from their peers, which is in turn reinforced by the irrational reasoning that celebrating Halloween, or even just on Halloween, somehow makes those that do enjoy the festivities less than those who don't. I understand that it may feel easier to simply control a child's behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions by simply dumping on Halloween, refusing to partake or even acknowledge it, and condemning those that do. But that's only because actually teaching children to understand, embrace, and respect the complexities of the world around them and to find common ground with those people around them is really hard. Welcome to parenting.
Overcome evil with good. You might have a special church event where you do something positive during that time.
You mean like these hell houses which use the guise of a haunted house attraction to hide moral instruction and veiled threats of damnation?
They don't need to be roaming up and down the streets and filling their minds with those images.
Once again, that goes back to parenting and teaching a child the difference between what is real, like candy, costumes, and community, and what is imaginary, like movie monsters, ghosts, magic, demons, and gods. I know, Doug, parenting is hard. Just try to keep in mind that your children are their own people with their own thoughts, emotions, and opinions, and not just objects for you to manipulate so that you can live through them vicariously.
And also filling their teeth with cavities.
If you're not teaching your kids about sugar in moderation and brushing their teeth regularly, that has nothing to do with the tradition and is solely on you as a parent.
If you can give out raisins, don't do the chocolate-covered raisins, carob-covered raisins.
Carob-covered raisins? Could you be any older? How about some Werthers while you're at it? Or maybe some Turkish taffy? Maybe some Boston baked beans?
But, it's important, I think, the kids learn from an early age that because we are Christians, we are different. And we may need to deny ourselves certain things, and we may need to stand up against persecution from neighbors and friends and say, here's why we don't celebrate that.
And there's the kicker right there. To teach a child to interpret their self-ostracization as persecution is downright psychological abuse. And that's because it builds a framework of belief in their minds that the mockery or harsh criticism they get for behavior that could be interpreted as antisocial only reinforces that behavior. Essentially, a mentality that they're right and everyone else is wrong. It's kind of like digging a deep hole and then hiding in it. And then whenever questioned, challenged, or mocked by others for hiding in the hole that they created, they take it as reinforcement to just stay in the hole and protect themselves from anyone or anything that might reveal to them that in a world as rich and diverse in culture, tradition, belief, and experience as the one we live in, all that hole really does is deprive them of the joys of living their lives to the fullest. And lastly, while I would actually consider this video kind of tame for a Seventh-day Adventist Ministries production, given the lack of end times references and veiled threats of damnation, all it takes is a quick look at the article connected to this video on their website to see what the real message behind this video is. All in all, it's nothing more than classic cult psychology 101. That being said, Christian or otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful Halloween. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And be sure to leave a comment below. I love reading your responses, and those interactions help with the dreaded algorithm. Don't forget, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. A link on how you can support these efforts is down in the description. And if you love scary movies, be sure to check out me and my filmmaker friends over at the Week in Horror podcast, now in our 4th season. Everything you need to become a channel member here, get yourself some official Bridge the Divide swag, support the podcast, or even vote for me in the Face of Horror contest is down in the description below. Once again, thank you all so much for your continued support. And as always, be safe, be excellent to each other, and together we can bridge the divide.